Hello, Barry.
Hello.
Good morning.
Libra Pig Llama. I don't get it. Libra's a book or it's a constellation. Either way, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't decode and it's
Well, it's
like
part of the zodiac for people who believe in the zodiac.
is pig there's a pig in the zodiac and a llama? I
There's a
don't think so.
pig in the Asian zodiac.
Oh well, the Chinese New Year thingy.
That's, well, that's right. There's the Western zodiac, then there's the Eastern zodiac. So the
Oh,
Libra pig.
and those are actually constellations, the Chinese New Year thingies.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they are animal derived, but
I don't
those
know
are
what.
I think the story goes those were the first 12 or so animals to actually go do something with the Buddha or something.
But llama? There's no llamas in Asia, are there?
No, llama is a more current phenomenon.
That's a South American creature, I think.
It's a play on large language models.
See, language is a tool for encrypting information.
Yeah, but you usually do a lot of wordplay yourself, Barry.
Yeah, that's true. Although usually,
Like
well,
you do a lot of etymology yourself.
yeah. Well, remember last week I had the proprietor of the Middle Eastern dancing studio.
Yes, that was a groaner. You
Uh,
know where you keep all your dad jokes, Barry?
oh, that's a joke, isn't it? Where to keep your dad jokes? I don't know.
Yes, in a database.
Database.
But bum.
I had a pretty long conversation with Anne Marie last night. She actually went back to watch a 3-year-old Sunday unblocking video where you came in at the very end. And it was the one where, without naming names, we discussed the scenario where Deborah got banned from the systems thinking group for no, inexplicable reasons.
This was years ago then.
It's 3 years. Well, this session was a 3-year-old session.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know what prompted her to find it or even watch this 3 hour or 2.5 hour session. Um, but what she did say is that she listened to Doug talk. You know how Doug talks in so-called Doug speak. And then at the end, you had a few words. And she said, you were a lot more coherent
Hmm.
and
What did I
understandable.
say? Did she remember? Did she recap it with you? I forget what I said.
Uh, let's see if I can give me a minute to recall it. It was about understanding when things went awry and leveling up was the key phrase. That do we learn enough from a misadventure to at the end level up? And what does it mean to level up and how would you know? And 3 years later, I said to Henry, I said, I actually don't know if the jury is still out on leveling up or not. Because how do you know what people learned unless they say, oh, here's what I learned from this experience. And if they don't tell you, then you don't really know. But I know
Well,
Stacy
isn't it pretty easy? We tell by how people behave, right? And the consequences of their actions and decisions.
afterwards, does
Yes.
the behavior change? But the thing is, I don't remember if people's practices changed afterwards as a result of that. I mean, if they did, it certainly didn't leave an impression on me to that effect. And what Emery noticed is that Doug tended to talk more about principles or theories, and you tended to talk about more about practices or praxis. And she thought that Doug was sort of out in left field or head in the clouds on theory, and that you were more down to earth with praxis. But the question is, do either of them yield to net upgrades in learning and practices going forward? And that one I thought, I think the jury's still out on that.
Well, I think it's on a case by case basis, right?
Yeah. Well,
If
you had
two
pointed
people
out,
can
by
hear
the
the same
way,
thing
You had pointed out that exactly the same phenomenon had happened 3 years previously in GCC or someplace with a different people, and that here 3 years later, almost the same scenario happened, where recognizing a type 1 error, a false accusation and a false scapegoating, as it were. And I thought you could apply that same stuff to what's going on in national politics right now. That really it's not, and of course, instead of just in a little group in Facebook, this is now, on the world stage. And so in that regard, our species seems to be regressing, or at least our culture is regressing, not our species, but our public polis, our public.
Well, did you watch the little video that Eric posted about Jerry's OGM session, or did you even attend it, where Jerry went on a little 3-minute rant or something about how we got to be so stupid?
I didn't play it, and I don't remember. This was a recent rant from a
I don't
recent
know if it's
episode?
recent or not, but Eric only posted it like yesterday or the day before.
Oh, I may not have seen it yet then. Let me, well, where did he posted it in one of the messenger groups?
Yeah.
Okay. I know I haven't played it. And so the answer is no, I haven't. And I don't know if it's anyone that I've ever participated. Jerry does his on Thursday mornings now, maybe always has. And Thursday morning, I'm tied up with Toastmasters. So I haven't been able to attend any Thursday morning sessions now for a couple of years.
Me too. Thursday mornings are when my CEO has his regular staff meeting.
Right. So pretty much I have been unavailable except, the weekends are fine, but Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, well, Wednesday morning is different. There's something else Wednesday morning, and then Thursday morning is Toastmasters. And so my Mondays and Fridays are clear, but nothing's happening. And so, at some point, Anne Marie said she rather liked the way that I comported myself, at least on that occasion 3 years ago. And I invited her to come to one of these Saturday, Sunday sessions. I don't know if she will. I'm not sure. She's got a lot on her plate. She's the head of household of an adult daughter who has a serious disability, and the 2 grandchildren from that adult daughter. And she's the only breadwinner. So she's really up to her eyeballs in challenges. And she's also
she's in Vancouver, BC, you said, right?
Yeah, which is very expensive to live in.
That's not cheap.
Renting a house, which has, it's her place to live, her adult daughter's place to live, and the grandchildren who are teenagers now, young teenagers. And, she's really living on a very limited income as a school teacher, public school teacher. And not just limited income, but being a school teacher is really challenging these days in US and Canada, probably elsewhere on the planet.
Yes, underappreciated.
So between the bureaucracy of the school boards and in some cases the unions of the school teachers, there's just a deadlock and
sometimes idiocy of school parents.
Yeah. So in fact, there was an hour-long discussion, not just about that topic, but about the dysfunctionality of many sectors of our modern culture, not just the schools, but any place where there's a bureaucracy, there tends to be a lot of red tape. People mentioned that zoning laws and other related laws make it nearly impossible to like, for example, certain size dwellings, if they're kind of small, the requirements for multiple staircases and other zoning requirements make it uneconomical to build certain size, modest sized dwellings. And so you either have McMansions or, I don't know, super cheap stuff. And sort of the intermediate stuff is getting harder and harder to finance because there's so many regulations. And somebody said, a a century ago, there was maybe 2 pages of regulations on zoning, and now there's thousands of pages on zoning and all that kind of stuff, and nobody can figure it out. Right next door to where I live, there's a property that had been a single-family dwelling way back to colonial times. In fact, it has a colonial building on the property that they're going to preserve, but they want to turn it into a small condo and build, I don't know, like 8 units. And it's been before the planning board for 2 or 3 years now. And well, they might eventually figure out a way to approve it. But and it's tied up in red tape.
I mean, if it complies with zoning guidelines, why would there be a need to delay? Right?
They have a deal. It may be in metropolitan Boston, it may be just state, it may be nationwide, about affordable housing limit, sort of minimum requirements for affordable housing. So if you're going to do a multifamily project, there has to be some number of affordable housing units. And it's a little bit vague as to what meets the requirements. So it goes back and forth, and whether the whole thing is viable or not, depending on the affordable housing element of it. And so that was one of the things that was going back and forth forever. And then other things about drainage and privacy, foliage between their property and our property, and a whole lot of little nits. And the board would meet on Zoom meetings about once a month, and they would get basically minuscule progress, if any, on any one session, and keep delaying things. I think they're finally going to come to a final vote maybe next month.
You attend these things?
I tuned into some of the Zoom sessions just to watch them, but I mean, first of all, you can't understand what they're talking about because it's all technical gobbledygook. You don't know what they're haggling over obscure regulations and whatnot, and you don't know who any of the people are or where they're coming from. So we have one guy in our condo who's been tracking it and letting us know, but basically says, well, there's yet another meeting Tuesday night, blah, blah, blah. And nothing happened, the next day. But yesterday on WBUR Public Radio, they had an hour-long discussion about this whole issue of increasing levels of dysfunctionality throughout our system, starting with the public schools, but also zoning and other bureaucracies, and whether labor unions in the commercial sector versus labor unions in the government sector, how they each basically have their own issues that cause things to become dysfunctional.
If I may, long time ago, I think it was either junior high or high school, in a social studies class, when we were studying what I guess was either social studies or civics or politics or something like that.
Government
The
system.
question comes up. It's a standard debate question, I think, in every classroom, which is, do you obey the spirit of the law or do you obey the letter of the law?
Yeah.
To me, even then, it was obvious there should be no debate. There's only one way to behave, and that is to obey the spirit of the law.
Yeah, but what the hell does that
But
mean?
it requires educated people. Otherwise, uneducated people can just stick to the letter of the law, and that's when you and your thesis about rules and chaos apply.
Yeah.
See, to me, if you have these rules and you're blindly applying these rules, and they take their random chaotic motion, and many times you're correct, it just goes dysfunctional, especially if the complexity of the society goes up and those rules have not anticipated the scale at which they're now being applied. That's why I always say you got to look at the spirit of the law. What was it intending to do? And you got to be able to personally understand the system well enough that you behave in accordance with the end intended state as opposed to what the letter of the law says. So for example, you can't something like jaywalk, right? I bet you everybody here violates that law if there's no law, if there's no traffic around, or if
Yeah.
it's like, late at night and, there's clearly nothing else going on, right? Yet the people who say, oh, you got to obey the letter of the law, if they're actually standing at a street corner, okay, and there's no traffic whatsoever, and they're waiting for the light to turn green, okay, yeah, you could say they're law-abiding citizens. But those very same people will still cross the street in the middle of a block just because it's convenient or whatever, okay, and not think twice about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So to me, the important thing is get people aligned with where we want to go as a society and model that to however many states you want, however many dimensions of value you want, however many different granular levels of detail you want. But that is education. And if you don't educate, you get stupid people. And if you get stupid people, you get people gaming the laws. And if you get people gaming the laws, then it gets 10 times harder to achieve the end state that we want. Maybe 100 times harder, especially if, the gaming happens at like, Supreme Court levels and the like.
There was a
So
very, go ahead.
thinking systemically, as a systems thinker, there's no other way, in my opinion, to interpret that other than to say you got to go with the intent of the law as opposed to the letter of the law.
So in yesterday's interview on public radio, there were two examples were mentioned. The guest mentioned 3 Mile Island, where he said the operators of 3 Mile Islands were meticulously following the rule book, and that failed to stop they didn't have the freedom to do what they thought was best, and they followed the rule book, and you had 3 Mile Island. And then Meghna Chakrabarty shot back with Chernobyl. In Chernobyl, they ignored the rule book and did what they thought was best and had even a worse. So she pointed out that, damned if you do, damned if you don't, that if you do what you think is best, you end up with a disaster. And if you follow the rules, you end up with a disaster. And the point is you don't have a protocol that, number one, you understand the protocol and you can follow the protocol and the protocol is effective. So between having the protocol, understanding it, and following it, and it being effective, often it's an empty set at the end of the day.
Especially if you hire and the techs who don't understand,
Right.
and they only follow the guideline, the playbook.
Right. Eventually, the developers of the system retire, and the second or third generation operators don't really know how the system was engineered. They basically are following the recipe. This is the difference between a top chef who makes the recipe and the sous chef who can follow the recipe but doesn't know what to do if there's an issue where the recipe's not working, can't diagnose it and modify it, doesn't have the deep knowledge.
So the systemic erosion of education,
yeah,
erodes that understanding.
Yeah.
In fact, it erodes even new innovation and new design. So new solutions don't come about.
You have to wait for a crisis to be so serious, so front page for so long that they completely have to reinvent the system. So, for example, this bridge thing in Baltimore was a crisis that came about because the bridge construction guidelines in 1975 didn't contemplate cargo ships as gigantic as the one that hit it. And basically the system sort of got more complex beyond the scope of the design of 50 years ago. And now they're looking at the sequence of events since then and have to rethink the whole thing because of a crisis. I mean, the pilot on that ship did everything as optimally as is feasibly possible. Contacted the bridge operators, they stopped the traffic coming onto the bridge, but they didn't have time to get the workers who were on the bridge off. So they averted the worst possible disaster, active traffic on the bridge, but they only had like 5 minutes. And that wasn't enough time to not only execute the protocols, but have the outcome be effective.
I haven't looked at the details of that case. It just seems like
They lost power. Now you can ask the question, why did the ship lose power? One theory is dirty fuel. That's a plausible one, but they haven't established, confirmed or falsified that one yet. The ship did pass inspections twice in the last year, but these are not American inspections. These are inspections, let's say, in Singapore Harbor or wherever it was. And eventually they'll figure out, why did the ship lose power? And also, they no longer have tugboats escorting the ships beyond the bridge. The tugboats only help them get off the pier. But once they're in the channel, the tugboat, you do have a local pilot on board. That's it. And also, would the tugboats haven't had enough oomph to do anything construct? Probably not. I mean, they said that the amount of energy or the amount of impulse momentum was the equivalent of a rocket launch.
I don't know. They typically say it takes like a mile for those things to get
Yeah,
stopped.
they have to go something like 13 knots to have rudder control, steerage. And if you're going that fast, then you take a long time to stop. And so there basically was no margin of error when they lost power that close to the bridge. They basically had no steerage, no power, and no time, except to make a phone call or a radio call to the bridge operator saying, stop the traffic right now, which they did.
As an aside, there's on one side of that bridge is the Key Bridge Marriott. And there was a time where I was staying there for a week every 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I know that area reasonably well.
That bridge. It's a very
cross it. I used to walk across the Key Bridge to get to Georgetown to go get dinner, frequently.
It's a beautiful bridge. It was a beautiful bridge. I've seen photographs of how it looked. Very, very scenic bridge. But it was built to 1976 standards when cargo ships were not that big.
Yeah. This is in the 80s that I was doing this.
Yeah, I think it was opened in 76, if I remember. It took them 5 years to build it. And now they have to cut down all this wreckage because of the stuff is all stressed up with the weight. They have to cut the piece into 100,000-ton sections because that's all the crane can lift. But they got to be careful because if you cut something that's under tension, it's going to go boing. So they have to do all the calculations to figure out how and where it's safe to cut it so that it won't go boing with a diver with a torch. And the calculations are complicated calculations. They've got people there who help build the bridge, as well as modern structural engineers trying to figure out what's the safest way. And since the column was busted and it's laying on the bottom, and maybe there's some stuff on the cargo on the bottom, they got to get all that stuff off the bottom so that the bottom's clear so they can start moving ships through the channel. And they can't have anything left on the bottom that it could, interfere with the hull of a ship. They got to work all that stuff out as quickly as possible to reopen the port. And then it's going to take years to rebuild the bridge. And the other two crossings are tunnels. And large trucks with hazardous cargo cannot use the tunnels. The large trucks had to use the bridge.
Oh, there'll be an exception to that coming.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe they'll figure out some way to reroute the hazardous cargo.
Maybe quicker to build another bridge somewhere.
Well, yeah, the other thing is, can the Corps of Engineers build a crossing that's quote a temporary bridge? I don't know what's
Wait, I
involved.
think there is a bridge not too far from the Key Bridge. The
Well,
one,
there's two downtown tunnels
yeah.
under the river, and then that bridge, which is the Circuit Interstate 695, and then after that, I don't know how far away you have to go. Surely there's going to be another bridge at some distance, but I don't know
I
what.
thought, and this is again decades ago, but I thought on the Key Bridge, if I was walking there, I could look to one side or other and see another bridge.
Well, it might have been a railroad bridge.
Oh,
Could
it
have
might
been
be
a
quicker
railroad.
to actually just modify that one.
So it's possible that you could put the freight on the railroad if there is a railroad bridge. And railroad bridge is almost always overhead. I don't think there's railroad tunnels under rivers, as far as I know. So you could put the cargo on a railroad bridge and then offload it back to trucks as as required on the other side. But I haven't seen any stories to that effect. If there's a freight railway that would be an alternate option. I mean, surely there is, because we know there's railroads in and out of all the big cities. So surely there's a railroad in and out of Baltimore. And as far as I know, the Francis Scott Key Bridge was vehicle traffic only. The other issue
And
is,
pedestrian. And pedestrian.
yeah, well, that's a long walk. It's got to be more than a mile.
I did it all the time to get to Georgetown.
Half an hour walk.
It didn't seem that long.
You can walk a mile in 20 minutes if you're walking brisk.
All I know is I'd walk to M Street, go down M Street, go to this Afghani restaurant. I think it was called the Bamiyan. It had really good kabili palau. Really good, lamb in saffron rice, with raisins. Really good.
The other thing is that the Port of Baltimore is a roll-on, roll-off, which carries
Excuse me.
so the ships can carry traffic which do not have to be pulled off with the crane. The cargo is already on wheels. So, and it's one of the very few roll-on, roll-off ports. The other ports, like there's one in Georgia that they can use, but it's not really designed for roll-on, roll-off. So anyhow, I guess within a month we'll probably have more of a story of how they're going to fix it. But the engineering is going to be quite a story that the general public won't be able to follow. You and I can. They got something like 7 cranes and 9 barges. And these gigantic cranes that can carry 100,000 tons each. But you got to cut up the bridge because the bridge itself is, I don't know. I think the one girder that's draped across the deck all by itself is 400,000 tons. And that's because
Okay,
of the
Barry, here's a stupid mechanical engineering question. How many drones, and do we have the kind of drones, would it take to lift a cargo canister? Let's say a 10 by 20 or 10 by 40 canister into the air, and then take it like a mile.
I wouldn't know how to calculate that. I don't think drones, I mean, helicopters was essentially drone's a small helicopter. I don't know that a helicopter can lift anything close to the weight of a container.
I don't know. Some of those big Sikorsky ones, they take whole trucks, don't they? Or at least Jeeps.
I mean, there's something called a sky crane, which is essentially a big helicopter. But I really don't know what the maximum load of a helicopter is for vertical.
But if you consider that versus the cost of getting all the concrete out of the bottom of the canal and burning,
well, they might be able to lift
cutting all that steel.
They might be able to lift it off the bottom. Although I think probably the cranes on the barges are going to be the way to go, because the barges, these are gigantic barges that have gigantic cranes, and they can all be stabilized. And then they have to stabilize the cargo ship to the point where they can then float it away either under its own power, assuming that they fix the engine, or tow it away, whichever. I don't know which it will turn out to be. But first they have to stabilize the cargo so that the cargo is not going to fall off of it.
Yeah, recovering all of that dumped into the canal is going to be a different challenge too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a count. I mean, somebody did count the number of pieces that are visible, but I don't know if they said, therefore there's, N minus X on the bottom. I don't think they ever said how many fell in, but a lot of them could have been empty. They also know from the draft whether these were full cargo or some of them were, because a lot of them I think go back empty.
Hmm.
It was going back to Singapore. I think no, it was going to Sri Lanka.
There's a big market in used storage containers.
Yeah, but the thing about storage containers is they used to be full both ways. Now they're only full one way most of the time. A lot of them.
They're advertised that way. Unused, used one trip, used two trips, etc. That's how they're listed, when you look at storage containers.
Yeah. I mean, we used to send our trash back to China, but China says, stop sending us back your trash. We don't want it. Old tires and old shoes, old fabric. And they said, stop sending us the stuff we don't want any more of it. But at least it's the kind of a story that readers like you and I can actually follow the details of the engineering challenges, the civil engineering, structural engineering, salvage engineering challenges. And that story is going to last for a good year before it finally falls off the front page. Once they get the channel clear so ships can get in and out, then a lot of the story will go to the back pages, because after that it's going to be rerouting traffic and rebuilding the bridge. They might be able to rebuild the bridge in 2.5, 3 years, possibly, if they use some new kind of modern bridge building techniques. Probably won't take 5 years like it did the first time.
We all want the new fusion or tokamak reactors to come online as soon as possible. Once that happens, everything else could potentially be accelerated.
You also wonder whether or not they will put in a ferry for the big cargo trucks that can't use the tunnels. I don't know what it will take. But you could put the ferry in almost any place. Don't put it in on 695 necessarily. So there's the story. Went to get my eyes tested today for new spectacles, and my optometrist says, nope, get your cataract surgery now.
Is it RLE that they were recommending?
What's RLE?
I don't know the exact translation, but last checkup, my doctor said I had cataracts and I'm over 60. So it was time for me to get RLE surgery. And once I do that, I don't need glasses anymore.
I don't know what RLE stands for. The optometrist simply said there's a clinic in Waltham, which is not far from where I live, that's one of the best in Metro Boston. Mercy, M-E-R-S-I, Massachusetts. I don't remember what it's stood for. Anyhow, she says
refractive lens exchange.
Okay. Anyhow, she says the whole operation now is down to 15 minutes. She says you'll do your left eye first, then you'll go back a month later and do the right eye, and then you'll have good distance vision, and you only need reading glasses for reading and computer. And I think you just buy those in the drugstore. So, but first I have to make an appointment to go see the eye doctor outfit and have them do however the referral works. So it'll probably be 2 months before I finish with the cataract surgery in both eyes.
You gotta do it. Do you have cataracts in both eyes?
See, I had them in this eye for years, and this eye wasn't ready yet. And the optometrist says, wait till both eyes need it. Well, I waited like 7 years. And she says, now this eye definitely needs it. A year ago, she says, you could go ahead and do both eyes now. Or she says, or I can give you a prescription. And she went ahead and gave me a prescription a year ago. This time she didn't bother with the prescription. She says, you need a new prescription, but there's no point because you really need cataract surgery and your night vision is going to be too limited. Which is true, because I really don't like to drive at night anymore. I don't have good enough night vision.
Yeah, I might opt for that. I have to find out what the insurance covers.
But you're younger than I am, quite a bit.
A little bit, but I'm still over 60 now.
Yeah, but geez, I'm a year shy of being 80. So
All I know is what they tell me is that if I do that surgery, then I won't need glasses anymore, and I'll be just ecstatic with my vision. That's what they tell me.
did they say that you'll be able to have both distance and close-up vision without any correction at all? Not even reading glasses?
They just said I don't need glasses anymore.
Oh, it's quite I think they do make not contact. They do make cataract lenses that are round and have different in the center versus the annulus. Whether or not that's something that they'll suggest to me, I don't know. I'll have to have the consultation first, and then they'll probably give me like 3 ranges of simple, medium, and complicated versions of the lenses. If they can give me something that says everything is going to be in focus, distance, and close up, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be good.
If that exists. And I guess, it's not good. I don't think that expense is going to be a significant factor for me. I could probably afford to spend twice as much as the cheapest ones and still not go bankrupt.
Well, with the advances in headsets these days, about the Apple Vision Pro
Oh, the goggles?
device, right? The $3,500 device. But what I've also recently heard is Meta has one that's just based on a regular glasses frame, like Ray-Bans. So you can get Ray-Bans
These.
with cameras and microphones built in, and this, basically screen imposed on your environment experience. Yeah. And people have been raving about early reviews of that.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to have good close-up vision because I do those repair jobs where you need close-up vision.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's been a problem for me because if I need to see something 4 inches away,
Yeah.
I can't get it in focus. I can be in focus an inch away, not 4 inches away.
Yeah, with these glasses, I know if I'm going to look at something very, very close or very, very small font, sometimes I just have to take them off.
Yeah.
See.
And if you're having to use magnifying glasses or those magnifying headset thingies. But mostly what I'll do is there's a guy who works alongside of me who's got better vision and better what's the word I'm looking for?
Fine motor skills,
Fine motor skills, yeah.
dexterity.
He's got better dexterity than me and better vision than me. So anything that's close up and soldering or whatever, I just let him do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we put our brains together on everything else. So.
Oh, speaking of which, last week I was asking about the battery, so I finally ordered my torque set so I could actually take my HP laptop apart so I can get to the battery. So that's what I'm gonna do.
I just had to take one apart. A guy donated 11-year-old HP Envy, a pretty nice machine.
Yeah.
But the main battery was dead. The RTC battery was dead. It only had 4 gigs of RAM, so I bought a set to double the RAM. And the only other thing that happened is while I was futzing with it, the hard drive died, which is not a big deal. But I put, instead of keeping the 500 gig, I just swiped a 160 gig hard drive from another defunct machine. Although you could buy those small drives for
Those are old SATA drives, right?
Yeah, they're small SATA drives. You can buy a new one for like 20, well, maybe not 20, but or maybe, yeah, I've seen them as less than $10 for 500
Or you
gig.
could just get a reasonably small. Don't they make SSDs in SATA as well?
They do. The thing is that because of what I would be using these laptops for, I use them for Toastmasters, and I might take one into using the fix-it shops to watch YouTube videos. But I'm not going to be storing, videos on it. I'm not going to be doing any heavy duty. I don't need compute power. I just need a machine that, can do, run a Zoom client.
Not only that, you don't want to putz around with configuration and installation, right? You want that to be instantaneous, right?
Well, I mean,
Say yes.
so I installed Zoom and I installed whatever else I
There,
need.
stop. Look into one word, Nix, Nix.
That's a machine, isn't it?
No,
That's an operating system.
it's three things. It's a package manager. It can be referred to as an operating system, and it's also a functional programming language.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
there's this thing called Nix OS that's got all three built in. And its claim to fame is everything you need to do is all described in one configuration file. So
okay.
anytime you want to install something, change something, blah, 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 you change that the configuration file, and the system figures out what to do.
I did determine that I can install Chrome OS Flex on this machine. I had
But you know what that means? You could get a brand new piece of hardware and have it up in just minutes, configured exactly the way you want it.
I know that I could, I confirmed that I could install Flex on it, but I ended up installing Windows 10 instead. Because I haven't played with Flex enough to know if Flex supported all of the resources that I would need. Like, for example, does Zoom work under Flex? Probably, but I've never checked it. Does Discord run under Flex? If I want to use this when we play gaming, does Fantasy Grounds run under Flex? I'll put Windows 10 on it. I can always change it later, but I'm still waiting. I got everything except the big battery. The big battery's coming from China, so that's going to take a month to get here. But the the little memory upgrade, the little battery, the RTC battery, that all came within a week. It's going to be about $50 worth of stuff to put it back into service. It's got four
RTC batteries. Are those the little flat circular
they're little
penny
coin.
or quarter batteries?
They're the size of a nickel or smaller, and some of them have a wire that plugs in, and some of them happen. These most laptops, they're on a wire lead with a little connector, and you got to be careful to get the right length and the right size connector because they vary from size and length. And when I got it, I put it back in a position where the old one had been, and I think it ended up pressing down on the drive. And because all of a sudden the drive stopped spinning up. And I don't know if that's because I put this thing on top of it and compressed it, or if it just died because it was dying. But suddenly didn't see the drive. So I just took a drive out another machine, smaller drive, and put Windows on because that's what was easy to put on it.
Hey, since you do that a lot, do you know about something called Ventoy?
I know about it. I've never done it. I've seen the videos on it. Ventoy allows you to boot practically anything on one.
Yeah.
You can put practically anything you want and boot off of the stick. So Flex or Ubuntu or whatever you want, you can make a generic bootable with lots of ISO. Just put a whole lot of ISOs on it.
I remember years ago, I bought just a whole set of 8 32 gig USB drives for that reason, that I had to reinstall different things. But now with Ventoy, in theory, I just found out about it. I can put all of those different ISOs on one USB and just travel with that.
I had bought a bunch of 4, 8, and 16 gig USBs, and then I went to do OS Sonoma, the latest Mac. Sonoma wants more than 20 gigs, so now you got to go to 32 gig. And what I ended up doing was I also bought a USB stick where you can stick in an SD card, a micro SD card. So I stuck in a 64 gig SD card to do Sonoma rather than buy yet another real. But that's kind of nice because you can the micro SD cards are like $8, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 a piece, and then you can just stick them into the side of the SD card, side of the USB thingy. But I I have a 2009 Mac Mini that had been running High Sierra. And I thought I could probably bring this up to probably Catalina, maybe Big Sur before I run out of oomph. And so I've been incrementally going to the next one until I get to the point where it's overloaded and I'll back it down again. The problem with High Sierra is that the browsers stopped updating. And then it says, well, you can't put in the newest Google or Chrome or Firefox unless you have a more modern operating system. Then what the hell? I'll just, maybe I'll get Big Sur to run on it. Mm-hmm. I got Monterey to run, but Monterey's too big. This machine's running Sonoma.
So has anybody yet gotten tired of any of the M1, M2, M3 machines and turned one in yet?
Tired of them?
Or dumped them or donated them or?
Oh, well, no. I mean, I tend to get machines that are 10 years old.
Okay.
I haven't, well, I think maybe I got some Dell Mini that only had 2 gigs of RAM and are only this big, and they're probably less than 10 years old. They were just barely big enough to install the first edition of Windows 10. But subsequent editions wanted more than the 30 gig solid state drive that was in them. And after that, you were stuck with the early edition of Windows 10. Mm-hmm. But it also had an SD card slot. So I put an SD card, micro SD card in it and put Linux on the SD card. Windows won't let you boot from an SD card, but Ubuntu will. The Windows to Go, they tried Windows to Go and there's too much trouble. They said, no more. You have to have an internal hard drive if you want to run Windows. We're not going to let you run on.
Stack is so archaic. Don't worry about it. But what's actually interesting, the last thing that I was impressed by that Microsoft did is WSL. You know what WSL is?
Windows System for Linux.
Windows Subsystem for Linux, yeah. That's actually pretty impressive work. Because that means that on Windows 11, you can install what looks like a real Ubuntu or a real Kali or a real Arch or any other flavor, a Debian, for example, of Linux, and be running alongside Windows and having access to all your memory, all your disks.
But you're going to need probably 16 gigs minimum of RAM to run both Windows and.
I don't know that that's the case. I don't think it.
You can do it on 8. I mean, I've put in VMware or VBox, whatever you call it.
VirtualBox?
One of the virtuals. So I can run Linux as a virtual application.
That's so 20 years old.
But it wants to take up half your memory. It wants to take up like
you have to pre-allocate certain resources to it.
Yeah,
and
so
then that's no longer available to your host operating system.
Exactly.
That's why WSL is so nicely done.
Yeah. But I haven't tried to go back and retrofit any of the 10-year-old machines because all I'm using them for is Toastmasters, and all I need on Toastmasters is something that runs Zoom.
By the way, you don't even need to configure it. Just get one of your USB drives configured exactly the right way and just run a live OS on your USB drive. And all you got to do is just take any piece of trash laptop or even anybody's laptop right there that's at the meeting. They just shut it down. You reboot back into your USB. You don't even interfere with whatever they have, and you're running.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I do have an OS Flex boot USB, but it turns out I've never actually used it. I basically end up dual booting either Linux or Windows 10 on most of my old machines, other than the Mac.
If you want to make it easy and declarative, look at NIX, NIX. That's my little guideline.
What I've really been playing with is, since I have a fair number of old Macintoshes, I've been running this OCLP, this open core legacy patcher that lets you run the later versions of Mac OS on the older hardware that's not supposed to support it. And for the most part, it works pretty good on it. Like this is a 11-year-old iMac. It's running Sonoma 14.4.
Yeah, you advised that. I still haven't tried it. I downloaded it. I still haven't started playing with it
Yeah,
yet.
so the latest version is Open Core Legacy Patcher 1.4.2, I think is the current version. And it will support all the way up to Sonoma 14.4 and down all the way back, I think, to Big Sur. And even older if you know, I mean, they've sort of stopped directly supporting them. I think you can still even go all the way back to Catalina, all the way back to High Sierra on really old machines. The real problem is the browsers. The browsers won't install on these old operating systems, or they'll install, but they won't. They complain. A lot of websites will complain the browsers are too old.
Have you tried Vivaldi?
Vivaldi? Oh, no.
I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I've always thought, why go with an off-brand, you know? But it has more and more good benefits that I'm willing to try out.
I mean, you can still get 32-bit versions of Firefox and run them on 32-bit Linux.
Okay, what about ARC? Have you heard of ARC? Have you tried ARC?
ART or ARC?
ARC.
ARC.
It's a new browser as well.
Oh, no, as a browser name, no, I don't know of it as a browser name. I know about Opera. I used to use
That's
Opera.
been around a long time.
Yeah, Opera's been around a long time, and I had Opera running on old Spark machines. 20 years ago, Opera running on Spark machines.
It is one of the oldest, freshly written browsers out there.
Yeah. So, but I mean, the main reason that I need a browser is that at the community center, when you go into the community center's Wi-Fi, you have to go into a browser to click accept their terms, and your browser has to talk to their server in order to click accept. Otherwise, you can't get the Wi-Fi. So I had to make sure that I've got a browser that I know is sufficiently up to date to do that.
Well, last Sunday I still thought was a pretty good conversation, and like I said, I had a question that I was bringing to Sunday, which I will now bring to tomorrow's Sunday conversation. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, look who's here. Joshua's here.
Josh has been here for a while.
I know, but he didn't turn his camera on.
Right. So if you guys will chat a bit, I'm going to go get some coffee. I'm going to do some coffee, and I got to start.
Tell us what.
No coffee so far.
You got snow there. Good grief. Look at the snow.
Yeah, it looks good.
Holy shamoly. You got winter. I mean, what was it here? It's 46 now.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I just got my eyes examined. My optometrist said, I'm not going to give you a prescription. Go get cataract surgery.
Yeah, it must be devastating. You said you waited 6 years for.
I needed it, but by right I didn't. And she says, don't get it until both eyes need it.
Yeah, I've been listening this morning. I was listening to the conversation.
So,
How do you feel? You gonna go for it or?
oh yeah, I mean, she didn't even give me. I mean, she examined my eyes and says, yes, your prescription has changed. Yes, things are out of focus with these glasses. She says, I'm not going to give you a new prescription. Just go get cataract surgery.
That changes everything, right? That changes your whole.
See, there's two issues. Number one is out of focus. Number two is dimming the amount of light that gets in. And at night, my night vision is just not good enough anymore. And it's too dangerous for me to drive at night because I don't get enough light to see the lane lines. Of course, nobody does the lane. They don't paint the lane lines anymore on 128. And it's really scary at night in the rain. You can't see the damn lane lines.
Yeah.
So I don't like driving at night, especially in the rain. And she says, once you get cataract surgery, you'll be able to see good at night again.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, she says everything else about my eyes are healthy. No glaucoma, no macular degeneration, everything is fine except for the fact that you got cataracts. Fix the cataracts and you'll have good vision again.
That's good news. So time for eye surgery. That's got to be scary, man.
Well, it would have been scary, if I had considered doing it 6 or 7 years ago. Now they say it's a 15-minute operation, you're in and you're out, and they, of course I could be mistaken. I could turn out to be complications that I don't anticipate, but I'm going to go to
It's pretty
highly.
standard, I think. Didn't you say everybody gets that? So in other words, they must have done millions of them this year.
They do. It's like a factory. They do. It takes 50.
Yeah.
You're in and out. Although you still can't drive for like a day or two. Although I'm not exactly sure if it's because of the drugs they give you to the pain anesthetic or whatever. But so I'll have to arrange for a ride to and from the eye doctor. I guess the first one is just a consultation, so I don't need to worry about that. They were not going to do it the first visit.
Well, how you feeling about it? Are you feeling like I got this, or is it apprehension?
Well, you always have some apprehension because going under the knife, it's always. But I've been anticipating the need for this now for 5-6 years. So
Yeah.
and I'm almost 80 years old, so at some point I know that I'm going to get too old to drive anyway. Not sure when that's going to be, but it might be another 10 years.
Well, I think you'll make it just in time for the cars to drive themselves.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, something like that.
They just put a notice on the Tesla cars that they're letting all the new owners get full self-driving for a month just to show off how good it is now for free.
Really?
Yeah, it's getting so good.
So I mean, who knows? I mean, I might end up with a helpmate who lives with me and does the driving and the shopping, or I might end up with Uber. Who the hell knows what it's going to be?
Oh, it's gonna be a robot and self-driving cars that come and pick you up whenever you want.
I don't know anybody who wants to move in with me, become a helpmate for my dying decade.
It's the robot.
Other than
Or you could get a person and their robot, so that'd be two robots, you and another person.
or I might end up in the so-called old people's nursing home too. A lot of people end up there in their last 5 years or so.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that everyone has their autonomy moving forward. I just watched the gentleman who got the Neuralink last week. Did you watch his little PR address?
No.
It
Neuralink
was
implant?
yeah, the first man that got the Neuralink. He's I think in his late 20s, but he was so happy and just so full of life and just so grateful for it. And yeah, it's just very, very hopeful.
Hi, Heiner.
Hello,
Let
Heiner.
Josh continue. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
What
Hey, good to see you.
what does the Neuralink do?
Connects your brain to the computer. So he thinks about moving the cursor and the cursor moves.
Okay, I see. All right. Yeah, there was a guy at the Media Lab working on something like that 5 years ago, but I think it was only tuned to his own brain waves. It wasn't, you couldn't take it off of his head and put it on anybody else's because it had to be trained to his pattern.
Heiner the winter. Here you go, Heiner.
Can you-
I woke up in a winter wonderland.
Look at the snow on the ground.
Are you in the southern hemisphere and it's winter?
It's just Jesus playing a trick on me. I don't know. It's a little late storm we got last night. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yes, I think it's about April, so very
Yeah.
strange.
Yes, here it
Yep.
is, 30th of March. We got one more day of March, then it's April.
The
It's all
global
melting
stranging.
already. Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture before it melts. It's melting so fast.
But here we had rain for a couple of days, but now the sun is out, the sky is blue, the winds have died down. It's still pretty cold though. It's still 46 degrees Fahrenheit, which is still pretty chilly.
And we are at least 1 month ahead. We say if the May is coming and the trees are blossoming, then it's the right time for spring. But now it's 1st of April, not 1st of May. So all this Middle Europe is 4 weeks ahead, at least.
So you're getting climate change, serious climate change. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of places where the crops are changing. They're going to have to change the crops because there's not enough water to grow what they used to grow. They got to figure out what else they can grow. I can't remember which country. Might have been a South American country that can't grow rice because they don't get enough rain anymore.
Okay, let's go back to the Neurolink. We had this with this ALS patient, our friend Angela Janssen. We had something like a cap to read the brain signals to make a Neurolink connection. But how does it link now? Is it implanted?
Yeah, it's surgically implanted, small wires.
And how big?
About the size of between a quarter and a dime of US currency.
Okay, and how thick?
I'm no expert on it. I don't know off the top of my head, but it from what I can see, it seems pretty small.
How much?
This is the first trial on a human, so it's not out yet. It's not available to the public, but it's the first trial seems to be successful. So if they do a few more trials, I think they're trying to get, I believe, the cost down under 5,000.
That's
Yeah,
That's-
they have machines that do the surgery, so they're trying to mass do it for a lot of people. And you're, pretty much they're saying, if you don't want to be blind, you don't have to, because they'll go directly to the cortex and put a camera so people can see if they've never seen before. So it's going to be life-changing.
Is Professor Birnbaum from Switzerland involved?
I don't know. I'm not a expert. I just watched the PR of the gentleman talking, and he was smiling from ear to ear and laughing at it with his parents, saying, "Thank you for taking care of me, but pretty soon, just put me on." What he said was, "Put me on Mars, and I'll run all the robots." Go ahead, Sam.
Hey,
This
Sam.
is a classic case of me going according to this following principle. I never will adopt V1 of anything. Imagine the things you could learn in V2, V3, V4, etc. But it's interesting that they're doing it. I've heard that, when they experimented pre-human implantation, it didn't go very well. So they must have come quite a long ways.
The cloud is bleeding through to your face. You need a different background. The background's bleeding through to your face. You got a cloud on your face.
No, I think it's intention. He's hiding.
Is that on purpose? That you're not, the key doesn't get rid of the cloud?
I switched locations, so we'll see.
He's got different lighting.
Yeah, your face is not keying out the cloud behind your face.
Yeah, I've got a pillar in my face right now. So what are you gonna do?
When
I can't really move.
When I
What's
search
that?
Neurolink, can I find it, or is there a
Absolutely,
Yes,
Heiner.
you can
Yeah,
find it.
yeah. It's all over the news. It's big news. It's international news. It's
No, but who are the movers and shakers? Which company?
It's just the Neuralink company right now.
Your
I'm sure
favorite
there's plenty
billionaire.
others.
It's a company.
Musk?
Okay.
Is
Yep.
it Elon Musk?
I think it started in 2017, I believe, somewhere around that time.
Okay.
I'll send you some information if I find some, like just the website, and I got you, Heiner. But it is exciting that they did the first human trials. You know, it's been some years. They planted it in the pigs, I think 3-4 years ago. And so it's the signals are working.
And what
Bluetooth is working.
And pigs are very smart. What did the pigs do?
They want, excuse me. I forgot to breathe out the smoke when you said that. They wanted the food, I think. They just asked for more food. But
Oh, I thought they start painting.
I'm sure they could. I'm
Elephants,
sure you could get them to paint.
elephants can paint without the neural link.
There's no end. Once you get signals going back and forth between brains, there's no end to what you could do. Here, Sam just posted the link in the chat if you want it, Heiner.
Oh, it's just neuralink.com.
Yep.
Spell it right though.
But the ideas of I was just listening to Michael Levine, who's the guy who's doing biomorphinogenic fields and trying to understand the balance between assembly of cells and the morphinogenic field of cells, and he's making huge breakthroughs with AI for his work in understanding how cells communicate and create limbs. So they're making a big breakthroughs in growing actual body parts and not doing it like inorganically, but doing it organically by telling your cells to grow those parts. So regenerative medicine is it's at the beginning, but it's the possibilities are really amazing. You know, we could be able to tell someone, hey, you know what, can you grow a limb? So
Skelegrow. Remember
I don't know.
Harry Potter Skelegrow?
What is Skelegrow?
In the Harry Potter series, I mean, when you went to the infirmary, the nurse gave you Skelegrow, which grows back your broken bones.
Okay.
Magically
Well,
grows.
I'm just over the moon at all the different thinking that I'm seeing in different fields, from cosmology to regenerative medicine to the microbiome. There's just a lot more. Let's rethink this, because we're rethinking how we think, and we're rethinking what intelligence is, and we're rethinking what the boundaries of the universe is, what space-time is, what physics is. And I think all this new thinking is going to lead to good stuff.
Now we can just rethink our dysfunctional government.
Nah, just leave it. Barry, don't worry about the government. They're always going to be dysfunctional.
Well,
They're just trying to control minds, but
And our money.
fortunately,
Not
the
just
money.
minds.
dysfunctional
Don't worry about it.
owns and operates the dysfunctional public school system.
I don't know. I really don't think they'll be used for money 50 years from now. I don't see any use for it.
Other than to bribe politicians.
What would be the point of that power control when there's other power controls that are way more powerful? Like, what's the point of drawing lines on maps and telling people to stay on this side and that side when you've got an interwoven network? Like, what's the point?
Keep people from not everybody wanting to live in Palm Springs.
Okay, I'll come up with another bad joke at the moment. When a billionaire dies, who inherits their senators?
That's not a bad joke. That's actually a good question. I think it's a great question, Sam.
Their ex-wife. Actually, the ex-wife of Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, is now the running mate of RFK Jr. She ended up paying for his Super Bowl ad. Now she's his vice president. And her settlement with Sergey Brin was never public. But you got to figure he's worth 100 billion, so you got to figure she's worth billions.
So now wait a minute. If people are saying, well, Trump is going to be, taking money from overseas parties, so who's he really going to be loyal to if he enters office? Think about this case. If this guy, Kennedy, is basically being bankrolled by his wife, who's really pulling the shots?
Well,
for example.
Woman behind the man, right. So
Cheryl Heiner, his wife. She's the one pulling the shots.
Cheryl Heiner is RFK's wife?
I believe that's her name before they got married. Yeah, the comedian, the lady that was on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, I don't know who she is. I only heard about Shanahan because she's the new his pick for VP, and she's the ex-wife of Sergey Brin. That's what I heard.
Yeah, well, I'm saying there's two wives that are running the show. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
One,
Hillary had
yeah.
a lot to say about Bill Clinton's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up being Secretary of State under Obama.
Well, she was the one pulling the strings. He
Well,
was the one pulling down his pants, I guess. I don't know.
pulling of the short hairs.
I find politics boring. I don't see how it's interesting. I like when you talked about a technocracy, Barry. I had a long discussion with a Malaysian guy who's very pro-China, and he said, "Oh, if you want a technocracy, come to China. That's what we have. It's a technocracy."
Well, but you also have an autocracy at the top.
And a dictatorship.
Well, that's autocracy.
And a technocracy all mixed in after a giant, huge revolution in the 60s. So you've got communism, capitalism, technocracy, and autocracy all mixed together in one.
And then there's this new thing, not a new thing, but a thing that called soltition, I think is what it's called. Do you see this thing about soltition?
No, what is that? I've never heard of that.
Greeks invented what we call democracy. It wasn't a voting democracy. What they invented was a democracy where you cast lots among the eligible to see who was going to be the governing people. So it was by casting lots, not by voting. And they argued that choosing your leaders at random from the populace was better than choosing them by voting. And
That's fascinating.
So not soltition, sortition. That's the right word. Sortition.
So how does this
Like choosing a
lot
jury.
casting work? Sorry.
Well, go ahead.
Curious. How does lot casting work, Barry, in this model?
Oh, you basically have all the candidates who are eligible, and you basically pick them at random.
That's called casting lots?
Casting lots is an old-fashioned word for rolling the dice.
Oh, didn't know that.
In biblical terms, they didn't use the word dice. They said casting lots. It's just a synonym for rolling random choosing.
Heiner says sortition, ?
Sortition is the word. And if you look it up, you'll find, stuff, people explaining what is sortition. It was the origin of democracy, but it wasn't by voting, it was by sortition.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting outcome to see who rises to the occasion and who falls.
I mean, in a sense, like for example, the chair, or the Secretary General of the United Nations is chosen for, I don't know what the term is, and I'm not sure how they choose them, but it's sort of a round robin thing, which is almost the same as sortition. Everybody takes a turn, being the Secretary General or being, the leader, and nobody can succeed themselves. So you basically work the population, everybody takes a turn, and in what order? Well, maybe just randomly. Could be alphabetical, but why not just random?
See, I don't know the algorithm, but the orgasm. But I don't understand why it's never these powerful countries, unless you take the cynical view that, hey, if it were Putin, then the U.S. would object. If it was the U.S., then Putin would object. So they always have to pick a general secretary from some very small country.
Right. Well, you have the veto thing because the big countries all have the veto power.
Right.
Yes, the secretary is basically, well, for example, when Washington said, my role will be president, the word president meant only that he was going to preside over the meetings, the cabinet meetings. And the word president didn't come to be meaning all powerful until much, much later, when the person who was presiding they kept giving them more and more legal power. And now the president, is practically an autocrat.
Well, they were writing in the powers in the Constitution. It wasn't evolutionary. It was instant.
The Constitution wasn't written till after, they formed the government and they had a constitutional convention, but we already had self-government before we had the writing of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So Washington said, they nominated him to be the head, and he said, I don't want to be a monarch. Don't call me king. How about calling me president? Because I will preside over the whole, convocation.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the presiding officer, the chair. But he didn't really have official power until they wrote it into the laws and the Constitution.
Well, if you have authority over 1/3 of the government, that's a bunch of power.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chief Justice has a fair amount of power, as do the other justices. Judges have power. The majority leader of the Senate and majority leader of the House, they have a lot of power to determine what laws are going to come up for a vote or what committees are going to get formed to study stuff. So you've got people who have, political power to steer the direction of government. Probably too much power.
Yeah, I'm still looking for the section of the Constitution that has the word immunity in it.
I don't think there is one, is there?
Yeah, that was a poor attempt at humor.
Yeah. Well, and Trump has a poor attempt at legality, so there you have it. But what's interesting is that nobody has reminded us of Nixon. I am not a crook.
Oh, no. That's actually been cited many, 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 many times. I don't know why you say that's not been referenced.
Trump has never said I am not a crook.
No, all he says is he wants immunity for being a crook.
Yeah. I'm allowed to be a crook, essentially. I'm entitled to be a crook. But Nixon did say to, I forget the journalist now, Frost, I think it was, that if the president does it, then it's not illegal. That's a famous quote from a Nixon interview. If the president does it, then by definition, it's not illegal.
Just because any idiot says it doesn't mean it's true.
That was why it was highlighted as a remark, because it was bizarre. But next April 15th, if everything goes as scheduled, Trump will be the first ex-president to be charged with a crime and brought to trial. Because Nixon was, of course, pardoned and never brought to trial on anything. And he was actually never impeached. He resigned instead of being impeached.
No, he knew he was going to get impeached.
He knew that he was going to get impeached, and he knew he was going to be convicted.
Yep.
That was worse, because you can be impeached and not convicted, and there's more than one example of that.
Yep.
Crime is fun until you can't get away with it, until you get caught. So.
And you can ruin somebody's reputation, legitimately or illegitimately. I mean, tries to ruin everybody's reputation just by posting on his social network.
Yeah. Well, I just heard a really interesting story. A comedian was talking this week about working in Hollywood as an actor and comedian. And he said the game that people play in that business, which is probably similar to politics, is it's in the law. If you say that someone did something bad to you, it's harder to fight the defamation than it is to fight the crime of them stealing the money. So if you tell other people that they stole the money, you get in trouble. So they steal your money, and then when you badmouth them and say they stole the money, then they file a defamation suit against you.
That's what Trump did. He filed a defamation suit against
Yeah.
his victims.
I'm just saying that that game is an old Hollywood game that they play forever, where they steal money from different people, and then when they get caught, they say, you caught me, but you can't tell anyone about my reputation, so I can keep doing it to other people, basically.
So, well, so here we have Trump losing his defamation suit against E. Jean Carroll. That was a biggie. And that means that maybe the teeter-totter is tilting the other way, possibly.
How do you catch someone like that everybody, knows, but you can't publicly say that they are a thief or a criminal?
Yeah, well, that was one of the topics that came up in a video, that the 3-year-old video that Sam and I and Doug Breitbart were in which the question was, does bearing accurate witness include observing something and having knowledge, but keeping quiet about it? And there was a distinction between knowing something that you know the truth and speaking aloud to report what you saw. And there's some people say bearing accurate witness does not automatically imply articulating it publicly.
I disagree.
I didn't make a distinction. I thought that bearing accurate witness was not only having the knowledge, the direct knowledge, but reporting it.
Yes, I also agree, because you're not witnessing unless you're actually on your authority representing the version of what you observe.
Yeah. And so, and there was the related one of whether silence is assent.
It is.
And Anne Marie says silence does signify assent. Doug Breitbart says no, silence. He claims that legally silence does not imply assent.
Well, legally is not the holding model here.
Yeah. So anyhow,
I would agree.
some of the subtleties about speaking up and not speaking up with what you know or what you don't know.
Yeah. That's that famous Phil Collins song, "I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight." You guys remember that song?
Not that lyric.
Yes.
The lyrics of that song are about someone witnessing someone drowning, and they didn't do anything to save them. And so it's I know what you did, I saw what you did, and I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Hold on. You were there, I remember. You saw them drowned, and you did nothing. Hold on. And there's a
It's all
yeah, there's
pronoun.
a
So the you is not the name of the person. It's a pronoun that is free floating.
Well, there's a folklore about the song that when he first performed it, he shined a light on the person that actually was there, that saw the person drowned, but he said nothing until it's good folklore. I don't know if it's true, but he shined the light on the guy at his concert and sang the song to him. So that's one way to get your revenge.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it is you're circumspect about identifying the party. And was it the mamas and the papas? They would sing songs. They would write songs about their infidelity, and they'd have to sing their own songs about their own infidelity without it actually being spoke about. I'm going to take a Bible break. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Or Carly Simon, I bet you think this song is about you, don't you?
Who was that supposed to be? That famous actor?
I don't know.
That was, she dated oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Big actor in the 70s.
I don't know the story behind it.
Yeah.
Celebrities dating celebrities, fine.
Exactly.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's kind of that's what I'm saying is when you're in that famous world, there's so many secrets you have to keep the illusion of fame. I've been working with a lot of musicians lately, and it's really tough to get someone to be famous. You got to do a lot of work, a lot of even if they're really talented, if people don't know to come to their concerts, they don't see the talent. So you got to get people in seats.
Well, I'm actually trying to be a music promoter myself. I'm trying to bring chamber music here to Camino Island.
Oh, how's it going?
We've got a concert coming up on April 28th. Fly on in, come to the concert. It's a
Oh,
string quartet.
congratulations.
Yeah.
April 28th. I wish I had
Yeah.
it like that. I wish I could just do that. That would be awesome. I would love to.
3 p.m. at the Camino Center.
I'm excited to one day actually be able to do something like that. I think it's coming soon.
One of my favorite string quartets, the Dvorak Opus 96, will be performed.
And you promoted the concert? You put it on?
I'm one of the sponsors and one of the promoters, yes.
Very
I'm
nice.
actually underwriting it as well.
Oh, well done, Sam.
Yeah.
I hope a lot of people enjoy it.
And it'll hopefully be the first of a few, if not several, if not many.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I want to get back into chamber music, and I'm investing in it.
I think that's great. It's so important.
In fact, I was walking the pups with Gail last night. So 3 pups when Gail, we're all just walking the street like we normally do every day. And about 2 doors down, there's a house that a couple live in. They've been there for 22 years, but they're only here for the summers. So they only come from like April through July, etc. So we met them, and one of them's an artist. Actually, they're both artists. One of them used to work for Nickelodeon and kind of behind the scenes at Nickelodeon for like 2 decades. And the other one is a professional puppet maker. So they're both in the arts, and they're both going to come to the concert. But yeah, that's the first professional puppet maker I've ever met.
Right on. I just watched Jim Henson's 1965 film. It was a college film that he did for 15 minutes called Timepiece. And it's one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen in my life.
That's damn early in his career. He didn't get famous till after that, right?
Well, Sesame Street went on the air in '69.
Yeah, so that was later than that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was his college film thesis. Like it was a lot of work that went into that 15 minutes. Like a lot of work, a lot of different shots.
I bet.
And just the Foley work on it was incredible, and the brilliance of the way he edited it. So you could see how a lot of the thinking of that film went into Sesame Street and creating all that characters in the world.
Yeah.
John and Jim Henson.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene in the film where he's painting an elephant pink to symbolize the pink elephant, the elephant in the room kind of thing.
And didn't that then evolve into the heffalump?
There you go. There you go. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and watch Jim Henson Timepiece short film. Really brilliant.
They were 2 of my role models when the internet started to become real in the late 80s, early 90s. And I thought, can we use the internet for education? All the pioneers of educational television, going back to Howdy Doody and Captain Kangaroo and Sherry Lewis and Joan Gans Cooney, Bert Hillstrom, they were all the people I looked up to who were the pioneers of the previous new technology that was harnessed for education. And basically I said, how did they do it? We're going to do the same thing for the internet.
Yeah. By the way, before 91, I don't think it was the internet, right? It was probably UUCP or some other thing, but it wasn't the internet.
I'm not sure when ARPANET became the internet. It was ARPANET, and then the name became internet, but I don't know quite how the name morphed from ARPANET to internet. But it was around late 80s, early 90s when the name changed.
Yeah.
It was going to be NSFNet. In the early 90s, they wanted to have NSFNet and not go public, not go commercial.
Well, there was MilNet and ARPANET and NSFNet, and they took MilNet apart and just stuck it just for the DoD and government places. And then they created the internet out of what used to be ARPANET, the commercial side of it, the research side of it, I
Right.
think. And that then, based on DNS, was what created the Mosaic browser, which was, I think, first available in 91. I remember downloading it in 1991 for Solaris. And you know what came with the Mosaic browser? There were about 20, less than 30 URLs. That was the entirety of the reachable websites from a browser at that time. So you got it. You got like 20 different websites you could go to. And that was the start.
And they didn't have
What
Apache.
year was that?
I think Apache came,
1991.
I think,
91.
did
Yeah.
Apache 92 or 93?
I think Apache was much later.
I think we installed Apache in 93 on our system.
Oh, you mean the web browser? Sorry. Yeah, the web
Not the
browser. Yeah. Was very soon thereafter. Apache with a CGI bin and how it's pluggable modules allowed you to do various different things. Yeah, dynamic behavior of websites was introduced by CGI bin.
Had Gopher and Waze IS before you had HTTP. They
You're
had
talking about what?
Waze and then
Gopher? Yes. Gopher was way before that. That was based on just ASCII interactions. Was it half duplex or full duplex? I don't even remember. But then what came? Okay, here's the trivia question, Barry. Between Gopher and HTTP, there was a significant standard that almost won. What was that?
well,
And
there
it
were
wasn't FTP. Wasn't FTP.
there was something called WAIS.
That is it. Z39.50. It's called. Do you remember what WAIS stood for?
Not off the top of my head.
Wide Area Information System.
Yeah, that's what I would have guessed if I'd stopped.
Was that a type of
Uh,
Usenet, Sam?
No, it was derived from trying to improve Gopher. And it was very
okay.
standards based. It was not Usenet based, but it was so specified and so rigid and so constraining that a very loose standard like HTTP and HTML was much easier for people to deal with and much more tolerant. And that's why the good, quote unquote, strict standards don't succeed. That's the lesson learned from that.
I still have the website that we created in 92 or 93. It's still running. And it still has some of the original stuff on it, including the
If
guy
so, you were one of the very earliest registered domains. I registered a domain in 95, and I was one of the first 20,000 domains, and I still have it.
Yeah.
But if you were in 92, that was much earlier.
I just heard musenet.org, I think in 92. Unfortunately, I let it, one year I let it lapse and somebody snarfed it up and locked it up. So then I'm usenet.info.
You could probably go back and see if it's available again.
The thing is, they want a ton of money for it, and I'm not going to,
Oh, they're just squatting on it? Because sometimes they squat too long, they figure, oh, nobody's going to buy it. They let it go, and then you can pick it up.
Yeah. And then there were two companies that also chose the name Micromuse as their corporate name. And one of them tried to sue us, and we said we were here first.
Yeah.
They're a latecomer. And that company, which is British, only lasted a few years. Now I think there's somebody else has adopted the name Micromuse much later, but they haven't bothered.
Mm-hmm. My own story about a lost domain, way, very early, like similarly in 1995 or 96, I registered samhan.com. And I kept paying the $8, $9, whatever it was every year to keep it going until my divorce. And then I couldn't afford to keep all these domain payments going. So I lost my domain, samhan.com. And then after divorce finalized, so there was a period probably about 7 or 8 years where I didn't have that domain. I finally found somebody willing to sell it, and they were trying to pitch it to me for like $2,000. I finally did buy it for $600, but I had to spend extra to get my domain back.
Yeah,
It's worth it.
I just, when we lost musenet.org, to a squatter, then I just went with Usenet.info.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore because there's hardly any traffic on it.
Also doesn't matter anymore because there's so many TLDs now, top level domains. So just like you lost the .com, yeah, you could just go with some other, TLD and it's almost as good.
.me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think the domain thing doesn't really matter that much anymore.
It's not a big deal anymore. It was a big deal in the 90s. It's not now.
Yeah,
It used to
everyone's
be-
clicking on a link.
Yeah.
What's
That's
that?
right. You don't even need to know what it is because it used to be a very small number of TLDs, but now there's dozens, if not hundreds. So the value of them has gotten.
Even .xxx for porn now.
Oh, those are valuable.
And Tuvalu has .tv.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the other one that? And then I forget what country is .ai, but .ai belongs to a country also.
Mm-hmm.
I don't forget which
Yeah,
country.
the porn industry is kind of democratized with OnlyFans. It's just anyone and everyone can get into it pretty easily.
They're making a ton of money, it seems.
Oh yeah,
Somebody said that the single biggest use of the internet in Utah was porn traffic.
Also in the Middle East, turns out.
I can believe that.
that's the first thing I did on the internet was try to download porn, and it just took forever. It was kind of slow. I was like, I'll just go buy a magazine; it'll be faster.
And now Facebook is promoting porn.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, today I got a sponsored suggestion, and if it wasn't porn, it was bordering on softcore porn. There's a lot of stuff that's borderline softcore porn that if you respond to it, then you get the harder stuff next.
Yeah. Well, the new thing they're doing, Barry, is women are using fake babies to fake breastfeed to get around the licensing. It's pretty smart. They're pretending they have a baby and they're breastfeeding, and they can't say that.
The funny thing, where a woman who's breastfeeding is told to cover herself, so she puts a cover over her own head and still breastfeeding the kid.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of. I mean, porn is all over Twitter, and it's just everywhere. It's saturated the web. I think it's
I think somebody said it's the single biggest traffic item demographic.
I actually don't think that's true anymore. I think that after the 6 p.m. hour from there to midnight, last I heard, 40% of that traffic is Netflix and streaming services.
I think streaming TV may now,
Yeah.
easily see that's now
Yeah.
super.
Yeah, I've been watching YouTube TV, which is really fascinating. The way that they stream it and the way they cache it and how they have it on you can supposedly DVR, like record anything because it's on the server, but the way that it comes down to your device is really interesting. I watch a lot of basketball on
edge.
it. Say again?
It's all served from the edge. They got edge servers.
I don't know how it's being served. I just know that sometimes I try to fast forward commercials and it gets wonky because the ad servers are really smart. So if you fast forward to the commercials too many times, they lock you in and say, nope, you can't. You have to watch the commercial. You can't fast forward for 30 seconds. And it's really just fascinating how I would love to see how they do the back end on YouTube TV. And the way they license with the carriers of the television carriers, because you have to be on a certain internet provider to get the YouTube TV. So you have to, and then that becomes your TV provider to get certain channels. And then if it's sports, you have to say what area you're in because they lock out certain games for different areas, which is, I went around it by creating a new account and saying I was from Boston to get all the Boston Celtics games. And after 3 months, they said, okay, you're not visiting anymore. You got to register. Your IP address is not in Boston. Stop it. So they kicked me off. But yeah, I think the VPN services are going to get interesting.
Yeah, I used to VPN through MIT back in the day, but I don't, there's no point to do that anymore.
Yeah, I think the next layer of the internet's going to be really, really smart. Like it's already device specific on Netflix now. I don't know if you guys are using Netflix.
I used to,
Yeah.
I don't.
In fact, my son got kicked off of my account because they now know he's not living at the same house.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess
You
you
have to.
could set up a VPN relay that did go through your house if you needed to. But it's not worth it. It's too much trouble.
Well, they also want to know which devices you're on for the account. You have to tell them which devices have access.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to use your phone or your iPad or your TV. So it's they're getting smarter.
Yeah, not surprising with the advent of language models, GPTs,
Mm-hmm.
staged, thinking machines. It's
Yeah,
just going to get more and more strained.
I've been going to these ontology club meetings on Fridays, and it's these open like standards organizations that their job is to look deeply into all the ontologies to create, object specific labeling for big industries. And it's a really fascinating thought process to start thinking, how do you classify something for different versions? And when is it solid and classified versus dynamic and moving? And one of the things that was brought up in the meeting was it has to be grounded. So it's index specific or generic specific concrete. And it's the same problem they have with large language models of how do you ground the information when it's making it up on the spot. It's not grounded in reality. So the output from all these large language models are not something you can classify and index ontologically.
Well, do you remember something in the late 70s, early 80s called EDI?
EDI.
Yes.
No.
What does the acronym mean? So,
I think it was electronic data interchange or interaction, or whatever. But it was basically an early attempt to standardize the terminology and IDs around such objects. And I still, to this day, think that that's a lost cause. You can't do that. The language and catalogs and taxonomies are too dynamic. So to try and specify that is too slow a process. You have to be much smarter and much more adaptive, in my opinion.
oh, you're right. That's exactly what the conversations are about.
Well, since the 70s and 80s, it's been evident. EDI was kind of like an attempt to standardize the interchange of information between servers, way back then for exchanging commercial transactions. And in a limited way, it could succeed because if you're very, very, very tightly constrained, like between Sears and let's say Wells Fargo, yeah, you could actually, standardize that to some extent. And then somebody else could say, well, I'm Montgomery Ward, so I'm going to use the same thing. Okay. But today it's just too big a domain and too dynamic and too fast moving. And I think you got to be smarter than those kind of concretized or granitized standards.
I have a question. Do you know this group called Ontolog?
No,
Nope.
Well,
I don't.
One of the early guys with Doug Engelbart and our systems guy around the Millennium Project in the mid-90s.
Jerry?
No, Peter something. The name will come. With Jerome Glenn. He was working with Jerome and me and some other people on the Cybernode. And so they started the Ontolog group. And that was the
Oh, ontolog. ONTOLOG. I thought you said LOCK.
Ontolog, yes.
I
It's
know.
all this pronunciation from German to English I had with Barry recently. How German is interpreted as not English. No, anyway, there we had exactly this discussion. Can we solidify? Can we contextualize? How can we build indexes? And my proposal was to make an extra reference space for the context only. So this is very much in terminology research since long. And now we are with this ontolog people who are still left there in a discussion to speak up. And as I learned, they were very close to that as well. I will find out the names and post it to you three.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, that's why I believe in. Sorry, hang on one second. That's my low blood sugar alarm. Sorry about that.
Getting high power alarm all of a sudden here.
Sneezing fit, Barry, or what?
Staying fit.
You okay?
It's just that it's spring and I've started the pollen's in the air.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I get a whiff of pollen, even though I'm in the house and the windows are closed. I know where it's coming in from.
Well, I got inspired by people thinking of ways to ground large language models. I have a friend of mine who's been working on them, and if they can figure that part of it out, they might be able to move forward and actually use them in ways that can move standards forward. So I think right now everyone's playing with fire.
Okay, so sorry about that interruption with the alarm, but if I were to continue with that previous thought, it was that I actually believe in multiple different micro taxonomies, micro ontologies, as long as they're adaptable to context. The context of an interaction is so necessary. You cannot expect that a universal context will suffice for definitions and specifications of any term or phrase. So I think that you have to take the general notion, the associated notions and terms, and then implant those in some way into a context, and then specialize the meanings and the nuance in that context for you to really be able to exchange information. And that, by the way, is one reason why I don't view the very productive as an interaction being just here's the question, he comes back and answer. Okay, if you actually hear an answer come back immediately, then the answerer, the agent who is answering, has assumed that they understand the context, has assumed that they understand all the nuances and differences in the terminology being discussed. And to me, that loses an opportunity to really delve into why that question was asked in the first place. So dialogue to me is establishing context and shared understanding, the deep grokking, much more so than the actual answer. It's the process of mutual understanding, the process of mutual model building, the process of mutual model merging and sense making. And only if you've achieved that can you even begin the solutions brainstorming. But if a solution comes back immediately, then you understand, or at least I understand, that all of those intermediate steps have been assumed and skipped over.
You could build that into the transformer.
Somebody's going to do it. I'm sure
Yeah,
they're
someone
doing it.
has to.
Yep.
That's I just saw Amazon put 2.7 billion into Claude because of the progress it made.
Claude is impressing a lot of people these days, especially in software engineering. It's really impressive. And by the way, here's the question. Is Sam Altman going to get his $10 trillion?
I didn't know he was due for $10 trillion.
He's asking for $10 trillion to build the next generation AI hardware.
Who's gonna,
Oh, Jesus.
That's the audacity of the guy.
who's got $10 trillion?
Exactly.
Are there any trillionaires on the planet?
Not yet. I think they're only around 200 billion right now, but wait a couple of years.
You think
Well,
200?
in their mind, yeah, they're just going to throw compute at it. That's the way they think they're solving the problem, which is the way most corporations run, is just throw more money at it.
It's going to get
It's
really
pretty
dangerous when we start putting quantum computing together with all of these LLMs.
I agree. I'm very concerned.
I have a very low expectation of quantum computing. I think it's been,
Well, there are people actually achieving results already.
yeah, but it doesn't scale. I mean, the quantum bits are extremely fragile. I mean, you sneeze on them and they lose their coherence.
Got to keep them at 0 degrees.
And not only that, you've got to have them in a gravitational field that's not changing. It's uniform.
For a long period of time.
Very long period, because there's a gravitational gradient present across the qubits. They're going to age at different rates. They're going to drift out of phase.
Wait a minute. They're not big enough for that to be a problem yet, are they? I don't think so.
I mean, that's big enough to cause the Bell test experiments to fail.
Yeah, but these quantum machines still fit into a standard size room, don't they? They're
Yeah,
not
but
that big.
I'll tell you a story. There is a room in the National Bureau of Standards, or NIST it's called now, where they measure gravitational field strength. And this room is, about the size of a house or something, floor plan. And they had to measure the gravitational gradient across the floor plan, because the gravitational field strength varied enough across the range of the floor plan that measuring the mass of an object became problematic. They had to work out the gravitational gradient across the floor plan of this room that measures masses.
What does that mean, Barry, when you say gravitational gradient? What is that?
If you say, you're sitting here on the surface of the Earth and there's a gravitational force, they call it lowercase g, 9.8 meters per second. But if you start putting extra decimal places on it to get it to a lot of decimal places, if I move sideways about a meter, the decimal places start to change.
Really?
And when they were trying to do National Bureau of Standards standard masses, standard kilogram masses, the room that they were doing it in was big enough that they had to work out how the gravitational field strength differed from the left side of the room to the right side of the room.
And does that differ from where, like, which room it's on? Meaning, what is changing? Like, what is the actual geology of the area?
Well, because the Earth is not, the center of the Earth is not the entire Earth is not at the center of the Earth. The entire Earth is spread out. And in fact,
Right.
Gravitational gradients to figure out if there's rock or oil underneath you. If there's oil, there's different gravitational field strength than if there's rock underneath you. And they can actually go across a field and say, the gravitational field strength is high here, so that's rock. Gravitational field strength is low there, that's oil.
Interesting.
Or aquifer. They actually.
Hey, Barry.
Yeah.
How many digits of precision do you need to get to that level of confidence? That's really amazing.
That's what you're doing. If you're looking for the difference between solid rock and aquifer or oil, I'm not sure how many digits you need. If you want to get the difference to whether you want to measure a standard kilogram or whatever it is you're trying to measure, how many decimal places do you want? I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 10, 12. You tell me. But at some point, you can measure the difference from 1 meter left and right.
Probably 6 or 7 digits would probably make you a billionaire if you can tell between rock and oil.
Probably, I mean, the fact that I've got a cement floor in the basement, and if I go out to my patio, which is 10 meters to my left, I don't have a cement floor underneath it. I got clay. And I don't know how much, the difference gravitational field strength you get from a cement floor versus clay, but it's probably measurable at some number of different places. If you take a clock and elevate it a meter, it runs faster. Atomic clocks run faster if you elevate them.
So at what orbit and what speed would you have to put a space station to run a quantum computer in?
Well, now you're really in trouble because
Yeah,
now you're orbiting the Earth and you're not a single point.
exactly.
What you're talking here is very much of interest to me. I was from geophysics coming to critching and co-critching. Critching was developed by a gold, later oil inspector in South Africa, doing something like geostatistics, taking the patterns of what is there and combine it in the early days when they also called it artificial intelligence into similar positions. So anyway, this discussion is very interesting. I have to leave, but I found this Peter gem.
YIM.
Does it ring a bell with any one of you?
I don't know the name, Peter Yim.
So he was instrumental in starting the Autolog group, and he
Yeah, I
was
know
the
him.
right hand
I do know him.
doing
Yeah.
he recently died. I think he was in the
Died.
later years in Hong Kong.
Jesus.
It says tribute to him, so yeah, he probably died. There's a tribute.
Yeah,
to him.
that's the
Yes,
Peter I know. I'm looking at the picture. Yeah, I know him. He's come to some of our conferences, the Doug Engelbart conferences.
but I think he died.
Wow, I didn't know he was 70.
Look at the
Well,
look at the name of
we
the.
discussed it. We discussed just it in our Futures Day of the Millennium Project recently, and he died. And I'm presently talking with this professor taking over the Ontolog group to really involve the situational issues around data. What, where, when, who, why, all this very basic Aristotelian questions. Anyway, so we have a common friend, Sam.
Yeah, in fact,
Let's
he was
talk
introduced
about
me.
Peter and Jerome Glenn
Yeah.
on some other issues another time.
Hey, by the way, Heiner, I do invite you tomorrow because I'm going to ask a specific question tomorrow, which is unlike my standard questions. I'm hoping that we get some good interaction on it.
What do you mean? What is tomorrow?
Come to this same channel, this same link, this same Zoom, same time tomorrow, and I'll ask I'll ask the group a specific question that I think I'm curious about. I hope you guys are as well.
What kind of group?
This very same group, same time, just 24 hours later.
Oh, our
Yeah.
session here.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
this
tried
session, part 2.
I tried to come tomorrow, 23
Sehr gut.
hours.
Sehr gut.
Ja, dann tschüss.
Bis später denn.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Peter Zane.
I like the intrigue, Sam.
Well, like I said, I like to do Saturdays different than Sundays. Sundays, I try to take a little bit more moderation role. Saturdays, it's a bit more free flowing.
I would like Anne Marie to join us one of these Sundays. I don't know if she'll.
I have invited her on multiple occasions.
Yeah, okay. I told her about it, as a result of yesterday's conversation. I reminded her that these exist.
Awesome.
She must have been reviewing the GCC group, because otherwise, why would she have been viewing that 3-year-old video from Doug Breitbart's Sunday Unblocking? Or would
Well,
she,
Maybe YouTube random, the algorithm popped it up for her.
it's possible, though my guess is she was probably looking at stuff on GCC group and came across it.
yeah, in which case, if she has been reviewing it, I'm surprised that there hasn't been other things that she has asked about, and that this might be the very first.
Well, I know that when I posted that whole episode on the GCC group, that she was in the loop then. She knew it. She was aware of that misadventure.
Can I ask you a question, Sam?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have the ability to go back to old YouTube postings and change the text on the video post?
I've never tried, so I don't know.
Okay,
You can
that'd be
change,
interesting.
you can change the titles and the doobly-doo.
Yeah, right. You can edit those things. I don't know what else you were planning on changing.
Well, I just noticed that a lot of YouTubers have the time. I don't know if it's AI that's doing it or if they're doing it themselves. I'm pretty sure it's AI, but it will do a transcript and then say at, 5 minutes to this minute, here's the subject matter, and post it inside the video so you can scrub to the different subject matters talked about.
That's new.
Yeah, I think that's new, and I think that's also something, I guess, called chaptering. You could actually create chapters
Yeah.
in the video, and then point to specific chapters and share those links. But I've not done any of that.
You have to do that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's just a button you can press in YouTube to say, go ahead and create the chaptering for me.
I don't know. If you find the button, I'll push it, but I haven't been able to find it yet.
All right,
It's
I'll look
automatic.
into it.
Chaptering is done manually by the
Yeah,
owner.
I think so.
You might have to re-upload, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if
That's
that's the
possible.
case, because if you actually create the transcript in a VTT file, the VTT file can be uploaded independently of the video itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's part of the VTT file or in any way similar to a VTT file, then I would assume that you wouldn't have to re-upload the video. That seems like quite a waste and a bad design.
I think you can also edit the speech to text typos, although it's tedious as hell, but you can.
Yeah, I don't try doing that. I just try making sure that the base raw material is available from which all this other stuff can be derived.
Yeah. Yeah. Editing closed captions takes 3 times as long as the video.
Yeah. And then, what's the return, right? So you want to make sure that that's cheap enough that it's worth it.
I mean,
Well,
is if it gets names, it often gets names wrong because I wouldn't know the name. You'll go in and correct the name. Beyond that, unless it's a terrible typo, they don't bother.
Yeah. By the way, that's one of the biggest losses of Zoom. Zoom actually knows who's speaking. And if they don't give you the ability to associate that with the speaker at the right times, that seems like a big information loss. It seems like quite costly for AI or YouTube to go back later and try to infer that when Zoom already has it.
The transcript is doing that now here on Zoom.
Yes. But YouTube doesn't take that, or at least I don't know that it can.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't do it.
And the problem is that with the transcript is the speech to text is dicey.
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of new tools, Sam. I think, especially you go to Hugging Face, you can do batches.
I know.
Yeah.
My whole
So
premise was these tools will eventually appear.
Well, if you ever want to put it in a trust or in some sort of organization, you could try to monetize it to get the money back to go into the project itself to pay for it.
Yep, I hear you. I've been hearing you. It's just,
I'm here.
a lot of work.
I'm waiting patiently. I get
Mhm.
it, but I'm here. So you're here. I'm here. Barry, you here for this?
The only occasion I would expect anybody to go back and look at these old videos is if one of us got caught up in some kind of a crime or a scandal or a terrorist act, and then they wanted to see where we were at. They would go back and scour all of these videos to find out, well, what did Barry say 3 years ago? That was
Well,
going to become a terrorist.
That's one cynical way, but I've been working on YouTube and the internet long enough to know that if all of the text was written in there, it would help the computer algorithm push it to people that would be interested in a specific part of there's been enough conversations where there could be, let's just say out of 500 hours, there could be 13 minutes that was interesting. And if that 13 minutes was interesting to 3,000 people, it would pop that algorithm into play.
Google isn't indexing blogs anymore. They stopped indexing blogs on Google search 5 years ago. And they even own Blogger. You know, it used to be that I could find all my stuff on my personal web server on Google, on Blogger. Now, forget it. Google
I
sites.
say the algorithms are really smart. I'll have conversations on Clubhouse about very esoteric subjects, and I'll go on to YouTube and the video will come up, and I know it's just for me because it's only has 178 views. So it's not something that they're pushing out to everybody. They're just pushing it to me on that specific subject. So I personally know that the algorithms work. So just letting you know, it's possible to work with the system in ways that get it seen by the people that want to see it, not the people that don't want to see it.
Yeah, I do think.
And there's
that this
very
is
few. Yeah, I don't think there's more than a couple thousand people in the world, but still 2,000 people it's a lot of people.
It's the inversion in my mind of the advertising model. The advertising model is, let's take my message and spam it to 1 billion people and hope that some 0.0000000% of people get it and I'll make my millions. Okay. The flip side is everybody out there says, here are my 10, 20, 50,000 interests. And some engine, like you're talking about, says, oh, something just appeared that corresponds to these 3 people that have said that they're interested out of these 8 billion. I'm going to push it to those 3 people. And that to me is a much more valuable use of their time. But all the power then sits in the matching engine. And the matching engine controls everything. Okay. So if it's doing a good job, it's helping society. If it's being corrupt, it's potentially being gamed. And that's a big question.
But if you just change the title and the thumbnail, it goes a long way in the algorithm.
Okay, I'll experiment with it. I'll put Stormy Daniels in some of the titles and see what happens.
I think you're about 7 years in the past, but yeah, try something new. Like
Hey, it's still
P. Diddy
current.
gets.
It's a still current topic.
Try putting P. Diddy. P. Diddy talks to Barry. That's a little more current. But yeah, we can have fun with it. Is what I'm saying. Is if you want to, I think if you wanted to just put out to the community at large, I'm sure you could get enough people to invest for a trial beta test and see how it goes.
It's worth announcing. It's worth playing with.
Yeah. When you're ready, you just let me know. I know you're busy.
7, 8 years.
I think I bought, what was it? A huge 8 terabyte drive for the project, and I bought a M2 computer for the project, and it's just sitting in the boxes. So
Cool. And as long as we put it into like holochain and have it holographically distributed, we're probably okay.
Sure.
I think they're using a 44 factor for reproducibility, so they'll spread it out there.
Yeah, I would love to run the conversations through some of these downloadable large language models too and see what you can do. Have it running in the nighttime and just going through everything, and then grab that data, run it back through a large language model and say, okay, find the titles, and then run that through the marketing engine and say, what are the sexy titles? And, let it do most of the work. I mean, it's not going to do all the work, but it'll do a lot of the work for us.
Right. Even a simple step like, hey, take the last 7 years and just give me all the snippets that are associated with Barry or Josh or Sam Chan or Kayla, or
and
whomever.
Also the other thing that I noticed I learned from Mr. Beast was if you put it on separate channels, so say we make a Barry channel, a Sam channel, a Josh channel, and then I run it through the language models that translate it into Hindi. Barry runs it through the Italian ones, so on and so forth. You do the French ones. That would reach a different demographic too if we translate it into different languages.
Right.
And that's how Mr. Beast has those channels.
here's something else that I'm semi-optimistic about, okay? And it's only going to be meaningful to like 40% of us. It'll be meaningless to the other 70% intentionally. And that is, if we could take even the crap that passes as political discourse and run it through models that say, okay, so trace the evidence, trace the logic, trace the rationale, trace the argument. And is there something here? Does it follow these 13 practices of logic, or does it follow these 15 fallacies that are, typical logic errors, blah, 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 right? So just go through all of that. That, to me, is one of the most interesting things we can do about publicly available, quote unquote, conversation / news / reporting. That, I think, is something we should be able to do. And that, by the way, is what Doug Engelbart was inspired by.
Nice. And are you familiar with a show on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel?
No.
It's a very interesting show. It's a comedian named Duncan Trussell, and he took podcasts and very random conversations, and he created a world where there's a animated character that goes to different versions of the Earth in the multiverse. So he goes through to another animated world where everything is just absolutely insane, super colorful, monsters, crazy. But the characters are walking through that world having the podcast conversation. So if you took something like Sora and created these fictional fantasy worlds where the characters are talking and it's the voice of you and Barry and myself, and on top of that, we could keep the same words but change the voices. So you have a whole nother world that's it's another mashup of this, but in a completely different format. And I think we're getting very close to that being quickly done with a Sora type of video engine.
Yep.
So in other words, we could be posting excerpts from this, but it's two people walking on Jupiter around the rings.
Yep.
Whoa, the snow just got me. Ugh.
Imagine our own version of Rick and Morty.
That's what I'm saying. It's exactly what it is. If you watch the Midnight Gospel, if you want to get inspired, it's very weird, but it's also interesting.
I think an extrapolation of what was that? Something movie hour. 20 or 30 years ago, there was a kind of a voiceover on a bunch of popular movies. What was that called?
Yeah, the 3001 or something.
Yeah.
Something in a movie theater or 3000. Yeah, the number 3000 was in there somewhere. I forget the name.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The
Yeah.
robot and the guy watching the movie.
I think it was Fiction Theater 3000 or some name.
Something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, if you get creative, we could be in the movie theater having the conversation while another movie is playing that we're watching that doesn't really exist, that was created from the I'm just saying that the ideas are endless if you take the initial time to sort through the data, get it into a publicly exchanged place where we have a trust that other people can actually use it. It doesn't have to just be us doing it. It could be the world. I mean, it probably, like, let's just say it only reached 50,000 people. I think that would be a success.
I'm only concerned about the first 30,000.
Yeah, I don't see how it could hurt. It would just be, I would like to go onto the internet and say, hey, watch this weird video. Look at that. That's Barry. I know that guy. Wait a second. That doesn't sound like, I know Barry too. That doesn't sound like Barry. Oh no, that's his words, but not him speaking it. Does that make sense, Barry?
I actually did that, about 10 or 15 years ago. There was the new animation systems that came out. They were free for the first couple of years. And I took actual dialogues, either real conversations from Facebook or dialogues I'd written, and I created animated characters and
I remember you did that.
Synthetic voices and put them up on YouTube. They were like 1 or 2 minutes long, and they were based on either actual dialogues with real people or synthetic dialogues that I'd written. And so the words were my words and the other person's words, but they were synthetic voices and synthetic characters.
Yeah. Is that Siri messing with you?
He says, here's what I found. I didn't even ask him for anything.
That's what I'm saying. I feel, and this is just me going a little insane. Feel like I'm watching the Google Assistant in my house because I have a smart house slowly start to understand the patterns of my house. So it's
Yeah.
starting to listen to Qcella and to me and to
Adapting.
It's really happening.
The adaptive systems are basically their learning systems are adaptive systems. That's one variation of learning is adaptation.
Yeah, if we wait long enough, the system will just do it for us.
Yeah, well, long enough, and when you're almost 80 years old, long enough is not a very long time. Or it can't be a very long time. Better not be.
Yeah, I don't know. It's getting weird already. I did you see the NVIDIA keynote last week, Barry?
No, I saw one a year ago, but not last week.
He brought out a bunch of humanoid robots on stage and then announced that he had built a virtual reality training center called Groot for all of these humanoid robots to practice in virtual reality in a simulated world that he created for humanoid robots.
But I didn't connect it to anything. But yeah, I remember the Groot turned up in a headline someplace.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. He's donating, these giant processors to help all of these large companies train all their robots.
Yeah. Well, they definitely need training, but so do humans. Humans need training more than robots.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw the Chat GPT mashup with the company Figure. Have you seen the demo?
No.
They've got a robot standing there and it's using Chat GPT and they edit it so it's, in real time. And they ask it, can you give me some food? And it hands them the apple and then it says, now sort the dishes.
Yeah,
did you see that one?
I saw that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole concept is that they're trying to train the robots using Chat GPT, but it's really kind of crude.
Yeah.
It's
because there were things in the box that were food items and toys, and could have distinguished a toy from an item, an edible food item, and whatever else. Yeah, I remember. I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that kind of training, what the Tesla company is doing with their robot cars is they're training them in the simulated world off of real-time video from the actual cars. What is it, Sam?
I like this last point you brought up because 30 or 40 years ago, the fact that Yahoo and Alta Vista and Google got away with violating copyright in order that they actually can index every bleeping piece of text on the internet with a free pass was what allowed them to grow. Now, similarly, if the people that own our data, our behavior, our events, our purchases, our decisions, our calendars, our assets, et cetera, are allowed to use that to train these models, we have yet again a similar commercialization and monetization of privacy, which does not compensate the sources of that data. If this were a good society, we would say this is for the good of society, and let's just let everybody, benefit from this, as opposed to, let's just let one or two companies make all the billions and trillions from this, even though they rely on the contributions of all the rest of us to do that. That's the problem with a capitalist system as opposed to a more socially centric system. I hate using the socialism word because that triggers people. But capitalism is exactly what allows this kind of shit to succeed and doesn't then spread the wealth. And it's about to happen again.
Monetizing.
It's happening.
So there's
right
my
now.
minor rift. There's my minor rift for today.
Sorry,
not rift, rant. My rant, sorry.
I don't know if it was the CTO or the lady who tried to oust Sam Altman, but she was just caught on an interview when they asked her specifically. The lady from the New York Times said, "Where are you getting this data from that you're training Chat GPT?" And she backpedaled quite extensively.
Exactly.
So it's happening. It's not only is it happening, they're excluding data from archives purposefully, which is the problem. I think the biggest problem is not just using the public data that we've given them, but they're purposefully excluding large sets of data from the training models.
Yeah. And
So
just
it's
for
like
the
book
record,
burning in the future. Yeah.
for the record, I am at a company which is actually not leveraging those decades worth of data that we have on our customers simply because we respect those terms of use in that master services agreement. So we don't mine that data that way. But there are many companies that do, despite
That's admirable.
the license, despite the terms of agreement.
Well, they're going to get away with it. That's the $10 trillion they want, is to grab every piece of data from everywhere in the world and use it in their training models.
It's not just that, it's to build the next generation hardware. They want to leapfrog NVIDIA, they want to leapfrog Intel, they want to leapfrog AMD.
Yeah, well, you're keeping up with the new chips that are coming out, right, Sam?
It's hard to keep up. I know that's what you were
It's
talking about when you saw Jensen make his announcements, and Intel's got their own series of investments, and Altman wants his $10 trillion. And I forget what AMD is doing, but they got to be doing something.
Yeah, well, I think AMD's CEO is cousins with Jensen Huang.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So but there's other chip manufacturers that are trying to build a new type of architecture just to train these models. I mean, Jensen Huang's the first to really monetize it, but there's other companies out there doing the same thing. So it's going to get very interesting. Yep, I've been up nights thinking about this stuff a little too much. I'm trying to let it go.
Anyway, I really, really am, in a sense, still angry at that, because 30 or 40 years ago, somebody came to me, if I could even still name the name, okay? Very famous person in Silicon Valley, and said, what would it take to index all the websites and be able to provide search on all the websites? And I said, well, I don't think you're going to get past copyright, so this is a non-starter.
Yeah,
They went
And
off
how
to
did
make
Sergey
billions.
Brin? Yeah, how did they just did it? They just didn't ask for permission and just did it.
I don't want to talk anymore about that, but
Yeah.
had I been less ethical, had I been less concerned about these principles, I'd probably be a billionaire by now, because I was consulted with those very early questions, and I
Well,
decided
you could,
that was
if
it.
you want to
copyright was
lose your,
important.
They did
if
it.
you want to lose your morals and ethics right now, Sam, you could be a billionaire right now if you want to do that. I mean, this is a whole nother layer of it.
Show me a billionaire and I'll show you the crime.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know that I could show you the crime, but there is a crime behind every billionaire.
Well, after watching a long podcast with Bill Ackerman, I'm very happy I'm not a billionaire, and very happy that I'm not having to make decisions about who's on what board of directors of what companies, because it's a game that I don't want to play.
And by the way, for the record, since I said that this actually happened, I'll say the individual who came to me, their initials are JN, for the record, just to know that it's concrete, since I'm going on the record with this, okay? And
No, I
this
believe you,
happened
Sam.
way back in the, what was it, probably early 80s. Yeah,
Oh,
early 80s.
Gee, I don't know if I would even recognize that person if I heard the name spelled out.
Very rich person.
Well, it's good you didn't do that. I don't think you want to be in bed with that person since the 80s.
That would have been Alta Vista as the first. Well, wasn't Alta Vista the first attempt to do that?
I think Alta Vista was probably after Yahoo, weren't they?
Oh, I don't know. No, I think Yahoo came in the 90s. Alta Vista, I think, was the first search engine. Yahoo came later. Yahoo was not really a search engine. Yahoo was actually an acronym.
Yahoo was a directory, yeah.
Had another hierarchical order or something or other. I can't remember the last two letters of the,
Mhm.
it was an acronym, yet another hierarchical ordering.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relatively innovative, but didn't have good management.
No,
I say that sadly
Uh,
because, you know, Jerry Yang was even from Taiwan. It's sorry that he didn't do the right thing, quote unquote.
you know, libraries have card catalogs, and if you can have a card catalog, how is that any different than having a search engine on the
Because that's
internet?
only the metadata. You're only taking titles, authors, dates, that sort of thing. You're not indexing every goddamn word.
Well, but you're giving the Dewey Decimal places, which is where to find it, and you're giving the URL, which is where to find it.
Sorry for my French. Okay, sorry. I apologize.
no, that's
Well, that's the same as the Dewey Decimal number. This where to find it on the shelf.
yeah. I had a similar thing happen. I think it was 2007, 2008. There was a website called Fakebook, and there was a security flaw in Facebook's architecture, and they asked me to download all of Facebook. And I thought about it for a week and said no.
You can also take Facebook and change the regular A to the other way to do the A in ASCII. You know, the printed A and the handwritten A, and they're different characters in ASCII. So
Wait,
they
what?
wouldn't realize. You know the printed A and the handwritten A, lowercase, are separate characters in ASCII.
No. ASCII only has 127 codes or 28, whatever. But there's only one little lowercase a and there's one uppercase a in ASCII.
Other kind of A, the one that's the way you would
The
handle,
at,
not the at sign.
okay.
That you people don't do the A like you do it in printing. In handwriting, people do
You're
it
talking
different.
about the actual rendered font. You're not talking about the actual 8-bit encoding.
There's the font, the glyph for the other A.
Right. So that's not the ASCII. That's not the ASCII, Barry. ASCII is only 127 or 128 values. It does not have the glyph.
I thought there was 100. I thought there was 256 characters in 8-bit ASCII.
No, ASCII originally was half of that.
Well,
It was 7-bit.
but it's always
But
been.
what's your point? If it's not ASCII, what's your point?
What's the name of it? It's not IMSADIC. I know it's not IMSADIC.
Are you talking about Unicode?
I don't. Here, let me ask this thing.
Unicode is a 16-bit encoding. ASCII was a 7-bit encoding. EBCDIC was a base 10 encoding.
You can make a URL which has the other kind of A in it, and the average person wouldn't notice it.
Oh, you mean ampersand 40 or ampersand 20, etc. That's something called URL encoding.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how you represent the handwritten lowercase a, but it's there.
Yeah, any rendering is not the actual encoding itself. It's a rendering. It's a font.
We've been warned that you can make a
I'm
fake.
gonna say goodbye. I just realized what time. I didn't know what time it was.
Yeah, it's almost 10:30.
Yeah, it's
All right, have a good one.
All right, talk to you later.
Cheers.
So what was the point about the written A versus the encoded A?
the point is that you could have a fake website that looks like Facebook.com and it's FACEBOOK.com, but the A is the other A.
No. That's why the URL has to be visible in your browser, so you can actually check.
And you can actually see it's another A. You can see that is the A that you don't normally see in printed, because typically in any font there's only the classical A.
Show me an example, because I don't think that's that easy to get away with. I mean, that easy to get away with for you and me. It would be easy for somebody else to get duped by that. Yes, I agree.
Let's see if I can figure out where to ask for it. Let's see. Let me try Gemini. In a URL, how does one represent the lower case a in the other friend's handwritten? File of. Oops, I put it in the wrong place. I put it in the chat instead of, I thought I was in Gemini. Click the wrong. Wait a second. I am in Gemini. Why is it go? Oh, I know, because I got this on top of it. That's why. I got the chat on top of Gemini. I got to get this. I got to move that out of the way. Gemini doesn't understand what I'm asking for. Try asking the same question.
Anyway, I get the point about people being duped.
I've seen it. You know, people being warned that Bank of America in the URL, the A in America is the other kind of A.
Sure.
And Facebook, you can do the same thing and have, to the average person, you think you're going to Facebook, but you're going to a fake site where the letter A is not the regular letter A, it's the other.
Right. And then you put in your credentials and boom, you're now done for.
And then you can pretend to be a site just simply by using the other version of. I mean, it's the same issue with L's and ones and
Yep.
I's and O's and zeros. You know, it's the same deal, except it's a glyph that looks like something, but it's not the one you think it is.
Mhm.
And the letter A, the lowercase letter A, if it only appears once in the name, you might not realize it. Because if it's in there twice and in two different ways, then you'll say, wait a second,
Right.
why is this letter A written that way and that letter A is written that way?
Right.
But it is a character that you can specify by some encoding system. I don't know if it's ASCII, but it's some encoding system. It might be Unicode. I don't know. There might be some other way to do it.
Unicode is still encoding. It's not the rendering.
It's definitely a different code.
Yeah.
Whether it's 127 bit or
it would have to be a different code for it to actually, try and steal your ID.
You know, it might be Unicode. I don't know. All I know is that it exists. Some kind of code.
It's the rendering that's fooling somebody, and the rendering is the font, and the font is not the Unicode or the ASCII.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the font looks indistinguishable to the untrained eye. Well, in a URL, there is no font in a URL. URL is only one font.
Yeah, it should be. So it would have to take advantage of L's and ones and
right. It's that kind of thing. It's a nearly identical URL, except that one of the letters has been substituted for a different letter.
Yeah. Like U's and V's and two V's and the W and those kind of things.
Yeah.
All right, Barry, shall we call it a day? I'll come tomorrow with a question. Hopefully it'll spark some conversation. If not, we'll go a different direction.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, let me do a save here.
Okay.
Save the chat and save the transcript. Okay.
All right, Barry. Talk to you then. Bye.